Ну что, друзья, предлагаю...
Okay, dear friends, I suggest we start. Once again, my warmest greetings to all participants of the Finapolis 2023. Greetings to participants of our roundtable. We're going to discuss one of the key subjects, that is, from what start technologies in Russia. They start from small companies and from the young people who are excited by new ideas. Promoting the facilitation of digital technology. Really, Fintech changed the outlook of our industry. It opens new chances and increases competition. Now, financial innovations embrace a lot of areas, starting from payment system to asset management and cryptocurrencies. Their results of analysis, KPMG says that the global funding of fintech amount to $52.3 billion in only half of this year. Really, fintech innovations are attractive for investors. People invest their money. It's a very promising area. Fintech regulators, this is also an interesting area. Special tools are established to help innovations, to facilitate innovations, and help companies to become full-fledged market players. Today we have people from startup community, people from the banking sector, and representatives of the regulators who will be sharing their experience and putting forth their proposals. What useful can be done so that fintech innovations in Russia really develop. Before I embark on our discussions, I strongly advise you to enter your applications. Look for section facilitation of fintech innovations. You will have a survey and we need your opinion. We ask you to answer the following questions. What sort of tools will be the most useful to help fintech innovations? Development of the existing instruments for the existing market players. Creation of the tools to help new potential market players, or consolidating cooperation between existing and new market players. You may answer this question at any point during our discussion. That will sum it up and compare the opinions of the audience and of the experts. Once the introduction is over, it's my pleasure to introduce to you members of our panel. Mr. Voloshin, Director of the Department of Digital Economy under the Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation. Mr. Kalaev, Partner of Free Fund and Accelerator Free. Ilya Ivaninsky, Partner and the Head of Banking Practices of Young and Partners. Korop, Mr. Korop, Acting Director of the Department of Financial Technologies in the Bank of Russia. Pavel Novikov, Director of Skolkovo Fintech Hub. Denis Osin, Director of Small and Micro Businesses in Alfa-Bank, and Viktor Vernov, CEO and founder of ROWI Fintech platform. Before we start discussions, I have a question to you. What sort of technologies, in your opinion, are the most promising for the financial market? Well, in a nutshell, Vladimir, good afternoon, dear friends. Most probably it would be appropriate to say that I am representing the Ministry for Economic Development. I am responsible for special tools, and the regime is not available for fintech innovations. We are discussing with the central bank, with our friends from the central bank, to use this mechanism. I will tell a few words about how this mechanism operates, to what extent it may be interesting and in demand. And then, if we have time, I will demonstrate how to charge this innovation. The federal law 285 allows us to put forth initiative in a variety of areas. There are plenty of things, medicine, pilotless vehicles and other things. There is an area for which the Bank of Russia is responsible, is financial market. For those areas where we are responsible, we have 12 and now on the 30th instruction for pilotless vehicles, both for flying drones and for road drones.
Года активной работы с самим инструментом.
Well, I wouldn't say that that framework gives it in a certain territory for a certain period of time, up to 3 years, and for a certain number of companies, there will be a special legal regime installed, well, with the possible exceptions and exclusions from the general legal framework. In theory, we planned that once the minister signs this regulation, 1 or 2 months will pass before we started. In fact, it took us years. We worked with the Ministry of Transport. We launched the experimental legal regime for medicine, but it took us several years to approach. I think that for fintech the potential is huge, and how citizens can use various digital services connected to that transaction, that as soon as this opportunity is available, it will give us a lot of advantages. But like in telemedicine, and here there may be plenty of risks, and primarily we look at the following logic: no innovation should be to the detriment of interests and security of citizens. It's a correct approach, we share it, but our task is to launch experiments, and when striking the balance between the new tools and the legal regime is the most difficult thing. We are engaged in a dialogue with those stakeholders who have different objectives. They need everything to be stable. Therefore, I hope that within a short term, we, with colleagues from the Central Bank, will be able to move forward and to develop probably the first experimental legal regime for fintech. We'll come back to you with an additional question. Stanislav, now the floor is yours. I have 2 questions to you. The technologies which you deem promising, and second question, what sort of tools are available now, in particular if compared with the Ministry for Economic Development? Then we come back to you to understand what is in place and how to improve those tools. Thank you very much. It's an interesting question. The first question is pretty straightforward. Look at Finapolis and you will see what we deem to be trendy. And each year we draft the program of Finapolis, proceeding from our understanding of our vision of priorities. Well, now we're in the 3rd day of our discussion. We can do something that AI is outliner. By a huge margin, still in there, about 60 to 70% of participants believe that the AI emerges with these technologies. Open exchange of information. Recently, a very good report was published, and there is trend for a wider use of tokens, where I even did not contradict it. Yes. Regarding the tools, what is there and what the Bank of Russia has at its disposal. We have one tool which is quite workable. We have one mechanism which has huge potential but which is not yet working, and another a half tool, so to say. The mechanism which is operational, these are the regulatory sandboxes of the Bank of Russia. It's not a single one. It's a cascade of 3 of 3 sandboxes: sandbox of the CBR, then the technology sandbox of Fintech Association. And if we talk about their testing various technology solutions, market players go to Fintech, and somewhat lower there are local sandboxes of partner companies. In August, we relaunched that mechanism. It proved to be useful. The speed is now 3 times faster. The bids are reviewed 3 times faster, and it's easy to complete the form. And you should understand, a sandbox, it's a tool with limited capacity. It is needed to identify legal barriers, and you cannot go to a sandbox to test real operations with real life clients with real money. Primarily, it's assessment of business ideas and some validation of these ideas, and testing relevant regulatory barriers which should be removed so that the tool proposed by participants of the sandbox will become operational. I think that sky is the limit, and sandboxes should be developed going further. From this perspective, we need feedback from the market regarding the renovated sandbox mechanism. We have now 7 active pilot projects. We're testing not only projects, we're testing ourselves as well from the point of view how we should develop these tools properly. That's for the sandbox. The second excellent tool, which Vladimir mentioned, well, it's experimental legal regime. It works with colleagues. The law 258 allows to introduce experimental legal regime for the financial market. However, with one detail: in order to do it, there should be a relevant adjustment to the existing federal laws. And the process underway is by no means an easy one. There are discussions between relevant departments to adopt another satellite law to allow for that. Inside of the Bank of Russia, we've tested a certain legal regime. We are prepared to offer it for interdepartmental agreement, but there is no law. Today in the morning we had a session, probably you visited that, where people discuss regulatory innovations. Then there was a plenary session. I will draw some conclusions. Innovations are moving very fast, and staff on people are lagging behind, and regulation is even slower than the people, and it doesn't keep pace with the innovations. A regulator should find some safe regulatory framework which will allow testing of innovations, and based on the results of such testing, to switch it to the general regime. So far, we don't have this opportunity. We're looking for alternatives, and it was discussed here at this forum what is on the surface: using of digital rights and digital currencies, among other things, for foreign trade under the auspices of unauthorized organizations, in an excellent business case for testing to validate using an experimental legal regime. What are the advantages of such regime? You identify the law provisions which should be excluded for some time span. You set the goals and objectives of the experiment, which is limited in terms of participants, timing, and even geography. The results of such regime started maybe it's about 3 years, up to 3 years. In a matter of 3 years, maybe earlier, maybe with some intermediate results, you make conclusions as to how successful was the experiment.
Повторюсь.
Let me reiterate that we would like to have the legal framework for the pilot mode. And as we have the real money there, real clients and real transactions under the supervisory of the regulators, the Bank of Russia in particular. And we have some kind of semi-operational mechanism, which is the Fintech hub activity aimed at dealing with the younger generation, hackathons, the youth programs. And this is an activity which is not tied up to any period of time. It is exercised within the whole year. And it is aimed at some effect. And the final takeaway: young startuppers come here with some good ideas and present their findings. This is the mechanism for promoting innovations. Summing up my first presentation, let me emphasize that the market is in great demand of a flexible vehicle for experiments in the sphere of innovations under the supervision. And thus, we may modify the general regulation. And Vladimir, will you please share those problems and those challenges you are facing? And what else may be recommended to the CBR on that score? Let me give you some statistics so that you have a clear understanding as to the deliverables of ours. 95 companies applied these mechanisms. And in 38 subjects of the Russian Federation, they may use the transport not using the labor of a human being. And Stanislav mentioned it already, that each experiment and each monitoring becomes indispensable for us. And the alternative of the general regulation change is quite a complicated one. You may come to a line ministry and try to change some sectoral law. This initiative will be launched jointly with other colleagues at all the venues. It will be discussed, and in a 2 years period, we will have the final outcome. But the question arises, at what stage everything has changed? And it means that at the end of the 2 years period, this technology can no longer be applied. And on the basis of all the discussions with all the regulators, we try to keep the technologies at the stage of their trials. And in the coming months, we're supposed to have 13 more experiments at the level of startups. But the idea behind is that we have to change the general regulation. And the line ministries, to what extent our practices are operational. And thus, the legal initiative becomes indispensable at this stage. But we have to take some preventive measures on a systemic basis. It happens so that the experiment is over. The legal regulation has not been yet changed. What needs to be done further? For example, we need the professional medical assistance. And more than 10,000 devices of that sort were disseminated at the level of all the regions of the Russian Federation, and that is indispensable for the patients to get in contact with the doctors. The experiment is over, but please give us back these devices. And in a year or so, once you get ill, this device will be given back to you. Of course, things shouldn't be done this way. We have to ensure the seamless process. A couple of comments on the suitability and convenience of this process. A small-sized company may draft the above-mentioned documents. And already we have some critical 20 positions, and the pertinent package of changes has been prepared. Already it has been discussed by us and jointly with the colleagues from the line ministries, and then this document will be submitted for the consideration of the State Duma. And that becomes practical for those companies which do not have large staff. And so we are waiting with anticipation the joint project with the Bank of Russia. We followed the statements on the available instruments from the regulators. Let me pass the floor to Pavel. Pavel is the director of Skolkovo Fintech. Pavel, what is the share for startups of fintech in Skolkovo, and how the situation has been changed over the past 2 or 3 years? And you gave just 1 minute to the ministry and regulator, just 2 minutes were allocated. We are going to have an active discussion. The ministries and regulators are always combating. And what are those trends to identify? In addition to that particular report, you followed the unequal battle of ours, and so how to regulate certain processes. Fintech Up Skolkovo is a community of startups encompassing 76 companies. Altogether in Skolkovo, we have 3,700 companies, that is biotech, energy, advanced technologies, and all the sectors, I think, are involved. And about 2,000 companies are related to the IT sector, and out of these 2,000, 276 are fintech. And 276 altogether. What does that mean? That is 1% out of all the IT companies is 200 out of 200,000. This is the company to fulfill the orders in special studios, and some of them were subject to our expert review. And 1% of innovative companies in this or that sector are located in Skolkovo. We have the club of startups, founders of this club. I see some of them here in the audience. And Stanislav is going to distribute the instrument, which is really a workable one. That is the sandbox. And I would like to put a question in the group. Have you submitted your application to take part in the regulatory sandbox? Yes, we had a negative expertise, just 12 of them. So 12 of them tried it and tested it, and 76% never applied. And these are the most advanced fintech companies. Why does it happen so? What should be improved by the Bank of Russia in order to facilitate this procedure and open up the access to this instrument? Let me answer your question about the trend. And the 9 months period constituted 54 billion rubles of contributions, and 1,025,000,000 is a catastrophic decline. though it's a very interesting segment for the investors at the global level. Everyone likes Fintech. But in Russia, if you come to Russia, over the past 9 months, all the venture investments, public investments, constituted $42 million, which is a scarce number. And that was invested by private funds to Fintech. And they say that it is not a very attractive domain for the contributions. And Fintech in Russia is somehow turned upside down. And the banks of Russia should become the full-fledged players. But Yandex is the one to become one of the best fintechs. And these startups disrupt the major players. 276 of them are located in Skolkovo, and altogether there are 400 of them. And they are oppressed seriously. And the proceeding from what we have in Phinopolis, we see quite a number of stands. Phinopolis is quite a mirror of the sector of the industry and its priorities. And you will see how many corporations are represented. 6 stands of a new partner are represented there. And Skolkovo also has 2. With their stands, but only 2. And that's how it works. And that is what we have for the support of our sector. How would you comment on this? And my colleagues gave me quite a number of answers, trying to aggregate and synthesize the regulation of this process. If we have over-regulated sector, we will get less inventions and discoveries. And the regulator should at minimum penetrate onto our industry. And we will have the withdrawal of IPR from the law and launch some joint programs for Skolkovo residents. And we know all the drones developed there, and the federal law is designated to launch experiments, and 2 instruments of that sort which came from the regulator and which came from us as the Institute of Development, are able to ensure startups. And Fintech gives, Fintech should be a focal point of it. And the second part, which I would like to cite, is that we cannot get connected with the bank via acquiring. All the banks, with the exception of Sber, give this access. Alfa, for example, it's not a matter of default, it's not something obligatory, but the large-scale bank do not want anyone to stay between himself and the client. And OpenAPI is the maximally speedy tool, but so far it hasn't been yet incorporated. So we have the representatives of this sector for OpenAPI, and the investors would like to have their stake there, but they cannot wait for too long for the law to be issued. As to the stock exchange, so they do not reach the startups. There are no pertinent instruments for that funding. We have Ram's company, which attracts the private investors. We give 30% of cash back for anyone investing in the innovative cluster and 50% of cash back. It gives us $42 million of investments onto fintech, and that is not suffice. And let's do it in a somewhat different way in 2024. We would like to have an expert review. They are under the supervision, and the startups have to undergo this expert review twice a year under the controlled limited experiment. And the central bank is not necessarily involved, and it is done in some countries of the world when the bank does not get involved. Every year, we give a home task at Phenopolis, and within a year period, these home assignments are to be fulfilled by the discussants and by the regulators. Dear coordinators, please do register those proposals which come from the audience and those spelled out by Pavel. And I guess that Mr. Vernov, the founder of ROWI Fintech platform, is going to make a presentation. You are a practitioner among all our experts, and Fintech used to be a small-sized startup company, and nowadays it's a standalone market player. And what were the challenges you faced, and how to become an independent fintech company? Thank you for your question. Let's start from something positive and how the regulator supported us. And I guess that our digital environment is really real perfect in this country. And we have some exceptions in the sphere of open API, but we have a very nutritious broth for other companies to get fed. And we are talking about the large-scale business. We also have the databases, and the laws try to close this data set. And the second thing to mention is that over the past year, we have had quite a number of changes. Not so many of us like changes, but for fintech, it is an absolutely indispensable process, as everything should change. We have the consumers' behavior of people, and over the past years, logistic chains have been dramatically changed, supply chains, also the consumption of products, etc. And fintech relies on the business where things are changing, but large-scale business prefers something stable. I don't know whom to thank for that, but there are quite a number of changes to incur. Whether it's done for good or bad, to what extent it may be applied to our business processes. MSP is funding a small-sized and large-sized business, and we see a disruptive demand on certain products. What are those global problems we are facing? And it is intertwined with this list of challenges of fintech companies. There are too many hypes, and if I get a ruble, if I say that fintech is a cool thing, I do not do it pretty often, as we have very tough competition in that sphere. A laboratory of innovations which emerge for a certain period of time inside the company, and people are fighting for talented and gifted staff. And we are no longer competing with these fintech organizations.
A main headhunter may be Sibura, Zone of Wildberries, or a state corporation. From this perspective, the difficulty of the current time, and that really intrigue you to think of that. That's the other side of the coin. That fintech is not the key to the door. It helps a lot fintech people in terms of finding employment, but it makes life with fintech much more difficult if they want to create a profitable and scalable business. Everyone likes to develop everything in-house. Yes. How many how many people you need? 10,000 programmers. I will carefully say that. Fintech doesn't need that. Either you put them on some gold cages where they will wait till the hour strikes. It's a difficult time from this perspective. What else? Where are other difficulties? Maybe the difficulty of the future. Indeed, we're entering to the more tense relations, not with the regulator, but with large businesses. Those who look in the mirror and say that I'm not fintech, I'm a big tech. Those who want to switch to this alter status, they look at Yandex and select people, etc. So far, really very little time has passed. We don't know what happens with these innovation laboratories, but it's a significant pressure, non-publicity of data. There is plenty of fintech in Russia, but just they're in-house, they're developing inside of themselves. It's not neither bad nor good, just a reality. And non-publicity of data, and here the big business stops to be our aid. Big business largely uses fintech, among other things, to position their decisions as something requiring some privileges or preferential treatment. I am voting for less privileges and preferential treatment because people are weak. As soon as there is some privilege open, people are queuing up there instead of fighting for a client. Major companies are experts in queuing up for privileges. You should understand that when you say that we support companies which describe themselves as fintech, there are some correct themselves which are separated from a major corporation. My request is really to develop a very fair strategy, support of digital environment, not pinpoint privileges, but to maintain access to information so that you will maintain that culture in open up. Really, maybe, I don't know in what sort of format, maybe there should be less hype about fintech. Our experience is, to a certain extent, fintech is not a response. What for do you need that? Some people tend to confuse digitalization and fintech. They say that I want to import our services to the mobile application. It's also a variety of things, but indeed, fintech, it's not only digital, it's not just, but it is what's using some high-level technologies, artificial intelligence, etc. Structured data, this is fintech. Indeed, this is a sort of a request from my side to separate fintech from just IT business, and probably, and why you IT or why fintech? What is the technology that you use, or you just call yourself fintech? That is our experience. Well, it rings well with the global experience. Sometimes there is no friendship between fintech and big corporation. Fintech insists that it is bought and receives a lot of money, and big businesses looks at Fintech that we're heating up something in microwave ovens, and Fintech is well on that frying pan and asks at each turn that, what do you think about our innovations? They look at it as a temporary hype. I think that we should take a more long-term view of this phenomenon, and then we'll see that Fintech may be not in-house, but in a format of partnership or investment or procurement. Thank you. Thank you, Victor. I would like to come back to the companies and organizations which help new innovations. The largest venture fund in Russia for IT startups, Dmitry. If you look at your website now, the list of your priorities for investment, you don't have Fintech on the list. Why so? Well, we have a very pragmatic view as investors. We invest in the things which change the rules of the game, grows fast and make big business. And Fintech, Martech, it's all the same to us. It should be okay from the law perspective. It is in Russia and we can earn on that. How many teams in our portfolio are in Fintech? Okay, it's Fintech. Score is in solutions, or either some close things. Like I looked at the picture of Skolkovo. The promo code is also in Fintech. It's a robot which walks with you to the retail center, retail park, and says, take the card with you. When business comes to you, we don't ask them, are you Fintech or not? We ask them, what are you doing? Talking about technology, what sort of technologies there are. Artificial intelligence maybe largely is the issue. What is Fintech? It's visible or and you don't know that's underpinning Fintech, AI, etc. While they're making a call or filing a bid that did some scoring and they provided some service to you. Do not pull the name tag on a particular service. You should rather look whether it's used for or not. This is the approach we should take. Talking about competition and other things, objectively, we're one of the most developed markets globally in Fintech, and to compare us with Europe and America, no, it's a different gravitation. You know that the same guy, like, so you can jump 10 meters high in Mars. Okay, that's okay, but the gravity force is different. A stronger competitor for us are banks. In Skolkovo Fintech Hype, 279. Sberbank have 1,000 teams who produce products. One Sberbank is 3 times bigger than Skolkovo Tech Hub. It's just the reality. And what sort of questions you may ask here, what you may do here? First and foremost, banks will be doing themselves, products themselves, in order for them to look at startups more, let's say, with a better attitude. They should take up some labor-intensive tasks from the banks. And it's the aspect of more active financial assistance. Roundtable, this platform has been developing for quite some time, but we're now at a point where this development is becoming faster. In my view, they became more accessible well before. To become a shareholder of a company, you should walk to a notary, etc. You can buy it in Alfa or Tinkoff app store. The OTC shares. It should be closer to the customer, to the consumer. probably to it the platforms which make your life easier, not to take the value tax from these companies because they provide financial services. That or tools, a tool of data is available is available to legal entities. And one other thing that there are more banks in this country than top 10 or 15 banks can do all the innovations. They can buy startups. But starting from the 15th bank and from the 20th bank lower, they don't have so many resources. I'm talking about the bank. And who will help these banks a platform for exchange with startups and the results? Such platform does not exist, but either there will be the further stratification of banks of those who are in airspace and those who continue to earn money in conventional ways, or we may create a forum which will be universal both for first, second, and third echelon banks. About our portfolio companies, what would you like to change with the regulator when a bank says that 75% of them do not use sandboxes? Not because the sandbox is bad or it is distorted, because if you look at the residents of Skolkovo, these are companies who are already not piloting something, they're doing the scaling up themselves. But they have other aspects. They're on the yellow list of the central bank, and they have to get out of there. How to get out of there? There is no single window where you can knock and maybe we'll communicate with you and they will tell us what is wrong with us. In my opinion, it would be useful to have such single window where a startup can come and say that I have this situation, explain to me what is wrong and help me how to get out of that. And to avoid, let's say, a long queue, we may say that such window will be available to Skolkovo residents, because a mature startup, it develops in the market, it becomes a resident of startup. All our companies where we invested became residents of Skolkovo. It reduces the flow of questions of people who do not do it in business, but create a new quality for the companies which scale up. That's about all. That's my story. Dmitry, thank you.
Домашнее задание было зафиксировано.
One more assignment was fixed and registered, and I would like to ask another expert, Denis Osin, to talk about the SMEs of Alfa-Bank. And if just imagine that you work not in the Alfa-Bank but the Bank of Russia, and you've been working with a micro business, and how would you help the minor-sized companies so that they become the serious players? And in 4 minutes, I'm going to answer your question, and the technologies are in great demand at the present day moment. And in Alfa-Bank, we have micro and macro business, and the artificial intelligence was a focal point. And when the generative models started winning and charging 5 turbo, and our consciousness is being modified, and thus expanding our business. And another topic to mention, which is applicable to business, especially the banking one, that is the advanced analytics. And all our prediction models and the data processing allow us to do some absolutely exclusive things for physical persons and legal entities, biometry and digital profile. And that's another answer to the question for banking products to become available for the majority of people and legal entities. And also, I would like to identify cyber security. That is not a technology, but it's a prerequisite for all the technological solutions of the present-day moment and the future. And if we get back and put ourselves onto the feet of central bank, we should say that our regulator is the most progressive one. I should say the best one. And let me emphasize that all the instruments and all the opportunities to take decisions at the market are supported by the central bank. The digital profile has been launched, and EBS and digital ruble. And I would like to draw your attention onto the development of fintech innovations. And this is not the solution or the development per se. We need to incentivize their application. And these solutions have to be promoted at all the levels. Well, if we talk about the profile, digital profile, it's a wonderful solution, and we may give the data to a specific customer. And on the one hand, physical persons and legal entities are somewhat scared of this instrument. And on the other hand, the social media gives not very validated data, and biometry is a scary thing, and it may bring about some kind of imbalance. And when we talk about the promotion, we may counter-inform the market. I think we'd rather draw attention to that particular fact. In the 2020, we, after the COVID, got permission to use the EPS and work with physical persons remotely. And yes, indeed, we have clients which may provide us with this data, but there are not so many entities, data entries. And the central bank hasn't yet improved that system to the end. And these technologies have to be available to everybody, and we actually have to improve this particular area. Denis, thank you so much. What about your presence in the feet of the Bank of Russia? We have Yakov and partners among our experts. And what kind of support you've got in financial sector? And how did you manage to become a standalone player? And what happens then? I'm not getting the head of the central bank, but I'm going to talk on my own. And really, I'm glad to have fintech or startups. And normally, we are witnessing the disruptive growth of startups, Strike, Square, etc. And probably it is less costly business for them. But that is not true. Fintechs actually emerged there, but it was a really painstaking period for the continent. But our banks are very well developed, and they see some kind of a niche, and they may invest rapidly onto something, and they actually do some other things, And every bank has its own margin, its own niche, like we pay some tips in the cafes. And but the bank has largest scale niches, but with a certain level of pain. And the question arises how to support and whom to support. And we come across the problems of trans-border payments. And yesterday at the plenary session, they said that some steps are undertaken in this sphere. And corporate clients and physical persons come across this problem. And if we set up some standards and cover some modes for organizing the payments on the basis of experimental technologies like blockchain, that will be good for everybody. IT import substitution is another component part the banks are facing. And that is not fintech 100%, but it is attributable to the banks. And some environment needs to be set up and the banks would test this product. And it could be really helpful. Helpful not to the major banks, but to minor-sized banks. And hundreds of developers may assist small-sized banks. And as to major banks, they experience the problems of other kind. And the competition is another factor. And so we have to organize some testing grounds in order to have these technologies and make it available to other banks. And the next item to mention for the small-sized banks, that is the lending of SMEs. It is hard to provide lending to them. And partially this problem will be streamlined. And by our estimates, the general effect from the open finance of Russia in the foreseeable future will constitute 300 billion rubles. And it will be done at the expense of SB crediting. And it's a real chance for minor-sized banks. So one more aspect to mention. We are talking about some new ideas of the central bank, that is the digital ruble, digital financial assets. And these technologies are undergoing the pilot stage and not yet distributed, but we have to show the market that these technologies are applicable, that they are viable, and they could be applicable to physical entities and legal persons appropriately. And the Bank of Russia may facilitate the creation of the one window for startups. And there was a very good proposal coming from Skolkovo. We may provide some alternative proposals, just providing consultancy to people. For 2 or 3 days, we've been discussing AI. We may already have the GPT model and have all the laws and bylaws and draft laws available, and thus creating the AI, and startups may sort it out, and what is available to them, what is not, what is legalized and what is not. And it's a good thing that we have initiated such a discussion with the representatives of accelerators, startups, funds, etc. I've been dealing with this problem for about 13 years, and we try to implement them. And the best ideas come after our communication with the client. And we have GasDev. The more often we discuss it, the better it will be for us all. Thank you for your kind attention. Ilya, thank you. Yakov and partners, dear friends, part of the home assignment has been fixed already, and already we've discussed it at the plenary session and registered them for the financial sector, and this section has a chance to get repeated. And we will see these dynamics, and we will keep track of these changes and dynamics of innovations in Russia. I fully agree with you. And the regulator got so many home assignments. And actually, I have a hat with of the central bank with a number of new assignments. Yes, it was all appropriate, and the regulator is not a representative of the consulting company. We don't have to compete with you in that sphere. But nevertheless, when we talk about the sandbox, we provide good services of a consultative nature. Everything which has been mentioned will be taken into account, and the forum is the venue for a dialogue and the exchange of the home assignment results. I think next year we will be reportable on that assignments and with the new deliverables and takeaways, and how we promote the mechanism of innovations. And that is the key mission of a regulator, no matter whether you have a head of the central bank or not. And we see the high demand in Fintech, and whether we have to call Fintech a Fintech without concealing any factors. And all the initiatives will be aptly developed. I'm not finishing up. I'm getting back to you as a moderator. And one more minute of your attention. Vladimir wanted to add, and I will be real brief, that indeed the potential of Fintech is not so tangible to us. Maybe we get together with the colleagues in Skolkovo or in the central bank, and the borderline between Fintech and other research is somewhat blurry. And we have to get together and discuss it in more detail. Two more items to mention. And Minэкономразвития actually abandoned it. And the draft law was abandoned, but other banks and other companies were in favor of this draft law. These are non-banking suppliers of the payment services. It is part of that law, which has to be measured. And we as startups are very much interested in this methodology. I call it the fertility, the quality of fertility, and how many startups will emerge with all the funds raised. And I think next Finopolis should also discuss it and develop the pertinent methodology of that sort. And so we will measure the number of startups and their quality. And there is a myth which was highlighted, and this scene that large-scale companies do not use etapas. Sber has 45 commercial contracts. VTB has 40 commercial contracts. And they are the leaders for using Skolkovo startups and the residents of Skolkovo. And that will be indispensable for the regional banks as well. And we have 26 technoparks in this country and representative offices. Maybe we should incentivize local authorities and financial sectors and the local players and tell them our own story as how to develop our sector. And we may organize competitions, contests, etc. I may be the one to do the job. Thank you so much. Let's have a look at what was going on as to the voting. The leader is the statement on the strengthening of cooperation between the existing and new market players. Yes, dear friends, thank you so much. Thank you for your experts. Thank you for your ideas, proposals. My name is Nadezhda Maradudina. I was your moderator at this session. I am the head of office distribution for marketing and regions, and also Echo A7 studio, radio studio. Come and visit us. Goodbye.